Braveheart Workshops, inspiring connection. Restore, renew, and reconnect in community. Live well, laugh often, and love much. Join our online connection circles. Be empowered in our virtual live events. Be a guest on our podcast shows. Hire us or be hired for speaking engagements. Enhance hope, health, and healing in your lives. Creating global connections. The Connection Show, sponsored by Braveheart Workshops, live with Jill Reynolds. The Connection Show, inspiring hope, health, and healing, sponsored by Braveheart Workshops, live with Jill Reynolds. And joining me today is my good friend, Stephanie Wall. Welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Thank you. Hey, Jill. Thank you for having me. I'm excited about this. What we got?
Well, I'd love the audience to know just a little bit about you, Steph, so I'm going to read your bio. Stephanie Wall is affectionately called Tower of Power and is a survivor of domestic abuse. After surviving emotional turmoil of getting out of an abusive relationship, she decided to empower other women who've been in similar situations by giving them an outlet for their stories. Stephanie created Speaker Stephanie and founded Her Story, Our Story, 1 Hour of Power, as a vehicle to promote healing through storytelling to remove shame and guilt from survivors. Stephanie is a best-selling author, an inspirational speaker, and a coach and consultant. She has won awards for her excellence in leadership, community service, and teaching. She holds an MS and BS in BS, I love that, a BS in management with a concentration in organizational leadership from Johns Hopkins University. Stephanie retired after serving as a commander with a local police department after 20 years and now serves as their strategic outreach coordinator out of the C-suite for local government. Stephanie has years of experience working in the field of leadership and the sciences, as well as teaching courses on topics such as mental illness stigma reduction, trauma recovery, and anxiety management. And she's done that all by the age of 21.
I receive it.
So what an amazing woman you are, my love.
Oh my gosh. I don't think we ever get comfortable with hearing our bio. Yeah. Like, it's almost like, right. Even though, and even when I listen to it, I even now say to myself, man, I swear to you, if you had this conversation with me, not 10, maybe 20, 30 years ago, I would have been like, yeah, that was somebody else's story.
Yeah.
But it certainly wasn't going to be mine.
Yeah. When did you retire from the police force?
Oh my gosh. Look, I know it's only 2021, getting ready to go into 2022. I retired on April 2019. I was retired for a cool 3 months. I had it all planned out. I had all these home projects I was going to do, and we were going to sell our house, and we were moving to somewhere, South Carolina, maybe Georgia, because I'm the only person in our family that still lives in the same community, the same town, if you will, for my entire life. I mean, entire life. I was born here, I was raised here, and I'm still here. We have 3 sons. They live in different states. My husband is he's from Maryland, but he's from the city of Baltimore.
Okay.
I've lived in Howard County all my life. So
you were ready. You were ready to retire 2019.
Ready to retire. August 2019, I went to work for our local government as the strategic outreach coordinator. Mm-hmm. And when I was young, man, it wasn't a term of endearment. I didn't like it then, but I understand it's what was my gift now. They used to call me motor mouth. I hated it. It affected my self-esteem greatly. and I lost my voice. When I say I lost my voice, I stopped speaking because folks were always talking about how fast I talk or the fact that I talked a lot. And so I kind of stopped talking. And I became really kind of closed in. So there I was already taller. I became all of a sudden I went from being the shortest person, I used to walk in lines. I became the shortest person until the tallest person. I'm 5'10". My voice is I have a deep voice. I have a husky voice, as they used to say. So they used to be something I sound like a guy. So I'm tall. They say I sound like a guy. I talk fast. They call me motor mouth. So my self-esteem was affected. But guess what I found out later on? That voice is not husky, and it's not a man's voice. It is sultry.
Yeah, sultry. So hold on to that, because we're going to go down another path.
Okay.
So just with this one question. So did you retire then in 2019 from the police force?
Yes.
And then did you immediately start your new position then as a strategic? When did you start that position?
I started that one in August. From August 2019. So from April, May, June, and July, I vacationed. I spent a lot of money doing home improvements because we decided that instead of moving, improve the home that you're in. I love my community.
So that's what you decided to do. And then was the reasoning behind it with the pandemic and the things going on in the world, is that what then made you take a new position in August?
No, actually the pandemic hadn't begun yet.
Oh, okay.
Literally, I started the position in August. Literally, I made the decision to go with some friends to Paris, which I didn't want to go because I was recovering from some things. And I was like, I'm going to go. March, pandemic struck, the world shut down. And it was bananas.
So when you resigned from the police force, had you had plans that you were going to start a new career, or were you at that point going to stop working completely?
I was going to work. I was going to focus all of my energy on working my own business. Is coaching. I was going to be a coach.
So what diverted that then, where you took this new position that you're in now? What diverted that?
Oh my gosh. So we had our current executive. I've always been a fan and voted for him and all that good stuff. And I was like, oh my God, we have this new administration. They're young, they're energetic. And I know that what my gifts are. I know what my gifts are. I know I have ability to connect anybody. I can talk to a rock. I love on everybody. And when they asked me, he asked me to listen, I need you to come in to be my strategic outreach coordinator. And your job is to just connect people to county government so that nobody feels like there's red tape, and particularly feel disconnected. Because, sometimes when you call county government, by the time you get connected to this one and sent to another person and press one, you have given up. Mm-hmm. And there's bad blood there. And so in comes Stephanie. Everybody feels like they can pick up the phone, and they can.
So the job was created by this person who knew you saying, I need this position filled. Will you do it?
Correct.
So you weren't looking for another job. It came to you.
Correct. And I believe that everything that you are seeking is seeking you.
Yep. Yeah. So with that, Stephanie, because of what you do with your show, Her Story, Our Story, 1 Hour of Power, what we do at the Connection Show, and that's why I asked you to pause a little bit, what we do at our show is we believe in connecting the dots of story, so that as you connect those dots, the audience and those that get to know you better will connect those dots and see the similarities in their lives as well, and then how your story led you to who you are today. So when you were talking a little bit about little Stephanie and your height and your voice, if we can go back a little bit to as far back as you choose and share with us the good, the bad, or the ugly, the good, the bad, or the ugly, of what that story led in your life to who you become today with the community outreach now and with your own program and your own business.
Well, thank you for that, Jill. So I will tell you, and you all will probably, if you look at my bio and look me up and everywhere, you'll see that I wrote a book called How My Part-Time Job Saved My Life. a true story of overcoming abuse and living a victorious life. And at the beginning, the very beginning of the book, I start from the childhood. And no matter where I go, when I say this thing, I feel like no matter what circle, what culture, everybody can relate. And that is this. There we were, jumping up and down on the bed in our panties that had the Monday through Friday written on the bottom. We were just been bathed, and I'm telling you, I don't know what it is with the talcum powder, but we had powder all the way to our necks here, and we're jumping up and down the bed, and I could smell of pine saw. Even now, as I'm telling you, the smell of pine saw was emanating through the house. And our then single mom, because she had divorced from our father, was downstairs singing away some gospels or something, cleaning. That was the thing, cleaning and singing, and the kids a bit freshly bathed. We were all excited that day, and what we didn't know was that my mother had an announcement that she was going to make, and that was that she was going to remarry. And she remarried a gentleman named Joe. We called him Joe Johnson by his entire full name. And for my entire childhood, this man, I became the thorn, not even the thorn, but the person that wreaked so much havoc on my life. You see, I look just like my late father. Apparently, I talk just like him. When I say talk, we have the same speed. My father, everyone say talk quickly, and he did, but I understood him. And for that reason, I experienced so much childhood abuse, so much so that in elementary school, I remember one of my teachers in the 5th grade was like, you're way too pretty. You're too pretty to be that angry. Can you imagine that in 5th grade, somebody saying that angry? To this date, I'm an educator myself. I'm a professor at our local university, and I know for a fact, because I was that young lady, that there's no such thing as bad kids. There's trauma. Instead of us looking at what the kid or the person is displaying, why? Nobody asked. And finally, somebody did ask me. And I did the unthinkable. I don't know about you all, but I told them the truth. And they contacted the authorities, or they didn't contact the authorities. I say they should have, but they contacted my mother, which landed me in more trouble when I got home.
That was worse than contacting the authorities.
Yes, ma'am, because it was you telling the family business.
Yeah.
And I went on for the remainder of my young years. I ran away quite a few times. I looked for love in all the wrong places. I remember reading the Bible from the beginning to the end. I didn't know exactly what was going on, but I knew that it just said, if I just accepted Jesus Christ as my personal savior, he'd be listening. So I was going on. I was 12. The King James version, thee and thou and thou, so I didn't know really what was going on. And I'm going to tell you that as you know, trauma will show back up. So as a child, I experienced, your parents, your stepfather, when my mother, when she would get sick, she would go in the hospital. He's spanking and whipping on us with belts for no apparent reason. The television was too loud. Mm-hmm. You interrupted me while I'm trying to drink this beer. Your mother's in the hospital and I got to stay here with you brats. Those type of things. Mm-hmm. And so that continued on, because how many of you know that trauma unresolved will keep showing back up and keep showing back up and keep showing back up. I didn't know any of these words. I didn't know what trauma was. I didn't know about unresolved. And so that led on into me becoming an adult. And the adult thought that I didn't deserve anything. I didn't deserve happiness. And whatever I got, I should be proud and happy to get it. And that led me to not one, but 2 abusive relationships. So much so that both, sadly to say, both ended up going to jail for trying to murder me. Mm-hmm. Now, so when I see folks now, they always say, "Oh, I want to be just like you," and I'm like, "Do you?" Because in order to be who I am today, you have to survive what I survived yesterday.
Well, and even to pause that for just a minute, okay? Because I think this is an imperative. And I'd love for you to pick up on this, okay? So what I'd love for you to pause on that thought for just a moment. Because I look at you, Stephanie, as this beautiful, gorgeous, empowering woman, okay? That's how I see you, okay? So what I'd love to pause just a moment before you keep going on is, so here you had gone through all of that victimization, okay? And you've moved into a lot of victory. But then I think what people forget, this is where I think many people forget, and I'd love for you to be transparent with me because this is something that I'm really aware of. So, do you see that there's days, or there's minutes, hours, and sometimes days that victimhood comes back into your life when something triggers you?
Absolutely.
Right. And that beautiful face that you have, that everyone looks at and sees you as this wonderful, strong, and powerful woman, behind closed doors many times feels like she's a little girl, still 3 years old, getting whipped or attempted to be murdered. And those days are the days that people don't realize, wow, Stephanie still needs a call from someone to say, how are you really doing, Steph? Because I think what happens is when we come across to the world on our podcast shows as beautiful, powerful females or men, people forget that we're still sitting behind a closed door, many times very lonely, sad, and hurting.
I think I every once in a while, I think I post something where I talk about, look, strong people need love too. Strong people need somebody to be strong for them. Strong people get tired of being strong. I mean, it's exhausting.
And strong people need people to call them and say, hey, would you like to get together? Because I find a lot of times strong women, and I'm one of them, so you can't see it unless you've been through it, that they don't call you because they think you're so busy and so professionally successful that they don't reach out to you because they just think you're just so busy you don't have time for them, and you're the one sitting behind the closed doors, the loneliest of the loneliest.
Let me tell you something. I literally have a girlfriend, and if I'm looking for my little fire here. I had to give you some fire on that. I have a friend who literally always says, Stephanie, I know you're so busy. And I'm like, okay, my life is full. Okay, then my cup runneth over. However, some days I have to check myself because I'm giving from a cup that's empty. And I need somebody else to pour into me. Mm-hmm. So when she says it, I'm like, well, okay, so does this mean that you can't call me to give me the prayer? Instead of me calling, I'm always can you pray for me? Okay, well, got it. So can you pray for me?
Yeah, and we're the ones, and I'm going to say we because I get it so much. We're the ones that never get the phone calls that someone calls and says, hey, Stephanie, how are you today? God had you were on my heart. Just wondering if you might have time this week if we can get together for lunch or dinner. Like, how often do we get those calls? And so I had to pause on that because I'm hearing your story and it's so much like mine. And yet I know that this is one of my biggest burden in my life, the loneliness and the waiting for people to call me. That makes it really difficult. And yet so many times people think that we're so professional and we're so powerful that we don't have a longing.
Let me tell you now, because now these type A's, I call myself the type ABs, we gravitate toward each other. So, sometimes either we gravitate toward each other or we do the unthinkable, which is we are competing, which is a thief of opportunity, right? And I have a good three people just like me, and they are, for lack of a better word, they are busy. But because we understand that, it's every once in a while I'll get, hey girl, I was just thinking about you. Or I'll get a text. Or I will do, like this morning even, I was thinking about somebody and I was like, oh my God, and I was listening to, in the morning, I like to listen to things that inspire me. Sometimes it's some Christian music. Sometimes it's a podcast, something, whatever it is, something that inspires me, get my morning juices flowing. And with this it was some Christian music. It was so inspiring that I just kept singing it and playing over and over again on YouTube. It was so good that I was like, oh, I know that my other A type, they need this right now because I've been watching them. They like boom, boom. Are they able to breathe? And they just, and what can happen, we give so much of ourselves, we forget we don't have nothing left right. Give so much to everybody else, we forget to give to ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I know this because I do it.
Yeah.
And I said, let me send this over. And I know them, when they get a chance, they'll look at it. I'm going to say about 1:00 today. I get back all these emojis and like, that was right on time. And I did it because I knew this is what I needed. If I needed it, somebody else needed it. But that is so, that was so on point, Jill, because oftentimes I have to remind people. Now, my husband understands because I tell him, that was one of the things I told him, I get tired. And sometimes I get tired of people that have to be always to be so strong. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things I think they loved about me most. He said, according to him, my sisters and I, every 6 months, we got to have a good cry. I said, well, that's what you see every 6 months. But we cried. First of all, if you start crying right now, Jill, you're going to take me right down with you. I'm telling you, because I feel other people's emotions, right? And plus women, we're emotional creatures. But I also know that sometimes I'm riding down the street in my car and out of like nowhere, I'll just yearn for my mother, who's, been deceased now since 2012. And I mean, like a yearning till I have to pull over because I can't see. Because I'm crying. I'm like, oh boy, somebody's going to call somebody because I'm looking. Somebody's going to pull behind me and say, oh my God, what's wrong with this lady? But I also realized that it's okay.
Yeah. And you never know, and you don't know when those moments, your mom passed in 2012, you said 2012? 2012. Yes. And with all these things you went through, did you, before she passed, did you have a fairly decent relationship with her?
Oh my gosh, yes. We had was like to come to Jesus. We talked about all of this. Like she didn't have no idea.
Did she finally leave the man? Did she finally leave the stepfather?
No, she did not. He died.
Oh, he died before her?
He died. Yeah, before her. And he died before her. And then she came and she lived with me. And
so then you had an opportunity to get close enough to share the pain and struggles you went through.
Mm-hmm. I talked to her before. She and I had this conversation before. We actually went to visit my sister in Indiana. And she was telling me things about her past that I never knew. This is another example, another thing what I talk about is that oftentimes, my mother's generation, you didn't talk about such things. Mm-hmm. And so what happens, you didn't talk about that you were raped. You didn't talk about the abuse you experienced. You didn't tell me any of this stuff. So these things go on to keep happening generationally because nobody is breaking it. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's telling us, listen, this is what we have. You didn't tell me that you had a nervous breakdown.
So after mom shared her story with you, because yours is her story, our story. And it's in the work that I've done, Stephanie, I've done work, and we call it legacy burden work. And scripturally in the Bible, they say 4 generations of sin, same differential. And so when you get to legacy burden work or 4 generations of sin, and you're able to see your story, which was physical, emotional, and I don't know if yours was sexual abuse, and domestic violence. So your story is this. Then mom now is opening up and sharing her story of physical, emotional, sexual abuse. And then if mom had the time and the memory to go back to grandmother, I'm sure grandmother, and then great-grandmother. So when we take it back 4 generations, then we're able to see the burden. Mm-hmm. And so we're able to name it and claim the rape, the abuse, blah, blah, blah. But this is where you move from the victim to victory in legacy burden work, is you take it back to the 4 generations, and then you can begin with the grace of God to bring in the generational blessings. And you start with great-grandmother, and you say, great-grandmother, I come to you and I bring you the blessing of being wanted. And then you go, grandmother, I bring you the blessing of being wanted. Mother, I bring you the blessing of being wanted. And Stephanie, I bring you the blessing of being wanted. And then you have 3 children, I believe you said. And then you say you name your 3 children. I bring you, Michael, Mary, Susan, the blessing of being wanted. So you bring the generational curses or burdens back, naming each one. Shame. I bring in from shame. I bring in hope. Whatever. So you name them and you bring them back, and you identify them and you connect with them. See, what most of us don't want to do is we don't want to take the time to connect because they're painful. But when you have those connections, then you can bring in and manifest the blessing. So with mom sharing her story with you, and you being able to see the resemblance or the connection to yours, did you at that point, because I did, when I did this with my own mother, did you not manifest the most unbelievable forgiveness to your mom that you've ever experienced in your life?
Absolutely. I think we cried, and it was like, because I listened, and as she was talking, I mean, I was listening so, like, I felt like I was holding my breath. And I was like, Mom, like, why didn't you tell me this? And my mom was just a 5'2", sweetest woman, everybody's mom. And I know why she didn't. The shame. And and her generation simply did not talk about such things. And so for her to tell me, even as she was telling me, it was painful. I could see that it was painful for her to even tell me that truth.
Well, and even I would even stop for one moment and say the other reason I believe, because this was my mom's story, and I don't know if your mom's were, but back in those days, especially, not as much today, but truly back in those days, a lot of the sexual abusers manifested. I keep having an itch. I'm so sorry. They manifested such fear, and the abusers would utilize the fear modality. If you tell anyone, I will kill you and your siblings. And that was my mom's. My mom's rapist at 7 said, if you ever tell anyone, I will kill your brother and you. And so she had so much fear from the trauma at 7, that she went through her whole life until she had a car accident and brain damage, and she started having flashbacks of memories. And one day she sat with me and said, I want to tell you this, and I hope I can tell you, but I'm not sure. And she shared her rape at 7. When she said it, she says, I don't know if and she remembered his name, I can't remember it, Mr. Martin, whatever, if he's going to hurt me, because my brother's dead now and I wonder if he's going to kill me. And I said, Mom, if it happened at 7, he's probably dead now and you're safe. You're safe. So I think back generationally, Stephanie, that generation was brainwashed with so much fear that's, I think, more the reason that they didn't manifest speaking the truth.
I agree. I agree. And then, of course, because even now, like my dad and my mom, I took care of both of them. And sadly, my mother, my father, and I only had one brother, which was my brother was actually the result of this rape. Okay. And when she was 14, I didn't know that. So now then it made sense to why I was pregnant way at 14. After an encounter, right? Mm-hmm. And while she cried. And when I think back on just being in the doctor's office, I'm like she was crying. I was 14. And I was wondering why I was almost like not laughing, but giggling. It was not a real laughter. It was a pain. It was a don't know what to do.
I'm a laugh. This is me. This is me. Yeah. I'm reliving me.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so when she shared that, and then she, we went from this one thing, and like it just after she was like, I cried the time when you called and you told me you came home, and the boyfriend had a girl in your house in your bed. And when I was describing to her, and she said, I cried because that happened to me. And, I know how that would make you feel. I know how I felt, and, and just so forth. But she didn't have the words, or she didn't feel strong enough to tell me during the time, hey, staff, this is an awful thing that happened to you. Mm-hmm. Give me a good old hug and then share something with me so I wouldn't feel alone. Because I'm going to tell you now, that's kind of brought a reason why I'm very transparent, because I know, as hard as it is and as much as I would love to take all of that trauma, put it in a hole back there somewhere, dig it and throw it there and never visit it again. Okay, it's good back there. It's not going to do me any good because that's what I'm trying to hide. And number two, it's not going to help anybody else, because I know that my reason for being that before I leave here, the go on wherever I'm going after glory, right, is that I am supposed to help. I'm supposed to support and honor and help other women and other humans who've experienced whatever they've experienced that's traumatic in their life. But I can't do it if I'm being all, well, I've never had nothing happen to me ever, negative, because it's not true. It's not true to anybody.
And that's why I love doing the connection show, connecting the dots of your story, because I love listening to the stories of those who said, oh, I grew up in a really happy family and everything. And I was like, And that, and as the minute I interviewed those people who said they grew up in such a great family and their childhood was perfect, you're going to laugh, Stephanie. One of my first recovery conferences I went to in the 80s had the who's who in recovery there. And Sharon Wegscheider Cruz, who's like one of the founders of codependency recovery, she shared a topic at that event, and it was called Codependency and the Looking Good Family. It looks good, it smells good, but man, is it codependent. And I love those stories and sharing with people who share, oh, we had such a happy family. And I'm like, Yep. Do you know that codependency is the number one addiction in the United States right now, in the world? Codependency, above drugs, above alcohol, above sex, above gambling. It's codependency. Because when you look at the definition of codependency is when we allow people, places can be your job, your church, a place. When we allow people, places, or things, and things will be drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, shopping, eating. When we allow people, places, or things to become more important than ourselves, we lose our identity and we're in the midst of codependency. So when you break down that definition, that's the number one addiction and disease killing most people today and leaving us hopeless, our health horrific, and the healing so devastating because the codependency controls us. And so when I hear someone say they lived in the perfect family, I'm like, codependency was your disease in that looking good family.
For the fact they even say the perfect family, we all know there's no such thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love Brené's book. It's where she talks about perfectly imperfect.
Oh, me too.
I'm perfectly
I love it. I was just listening to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I could go on and tell you about even how my ex-husband told me, I never met his family, but he told me this story about his family, and it was so like La La Land. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I want. I ate for that. Well, the entire story was fabricated.
And you bought into that lie, and that's how he hooked you.
Hook, line, is this joker, his family wasn't much different than mine.
Exactly. So because of time, let's move forward. And mom passed away, stepdad passed away. There was some healing there before the passing. The divorces occurred. And so then at what point then did you feel like this transformation in your life that led you to doing what you're doing today?
I'm going to tell you, it started actually before, even before I finally got divorced. It was just, I worked in I was assistant manager in the leasing office, and the cleaning company, the guy that owned the cleaning company, he actually did some of the work. But what I didn't know was he was a reverend. He had his own church. He was starting a church, like right from his home. And he used to come in and kind of watch, and he watched and he watched, and he would just kind of pray, "Can I pray for you?" Yes. And then one day he asked me, well, my wife and I and the kids would love if you and your kids could come over for, your family could come over for prayer, Bible study. I was like, sure. Drove over. I will tell you, they changed my life just by telling me, repeating what, I've heard all my life, but this time making me believe that God loved me. Right? Despite everything, God loved me. And so I started growing. And then I was like, okay, so I started reading books. I started researching. I started really digging down, drilling down to, okay, what's different? What can change? And the one thing I knew that if nothing was going to change until I did. But I know the change is, look, it was who I was up until that moment. At that point, so 23 years old, wasn't going to just change overnight. I needed to do, that's what I believed. So I just started doing small things a little bit at a time. And I noticed I just started, okay, if I hang around the same people and expect the same results, I'm gonna have the same results. So I started changing my crowd just a little bit, right? If the folks that were with me, I wanted to help them live a better life if they wanted, and I just invited them to come where I was. And some of them did, and their lives got better. I just changed my mindset. I really changed my mindset. And when I tell you, I leaned on my faith so hard. I mean, I was laying on it because I tried everything else. It didn't work. So let me try this. I made stumbling steps. As they say, I backslid. I fell down. I got back up, as the song say, 1,099 times. I almost lost my life in the middle of all of that in the growth spurt. But then once I came out, I remember just one time, I was like, Lord, I just don't even know. I give up. I just give up. I'm just gonna exist. I kind of exist in you, whatever you want me to do. You just do it. I just focus. I'm just gonna focus on this. I'm gonna focus on my life. I'm not gonna try to just do anything. No relationships, because I'm not relationship material or something. I just pick the losers or something. And in comes my husband, who said I was just the meanest person in the world. He said he spoke to me and I was like, hi. I was like, well, and he just kind of called me out on my crap. He kind of called me out on, okay, how long are you going to tell yourself that story? And then my girlfriend started calling me out on it, because I was holding on to it. I was going to tell that story until you're going to listen to it. And I was going to tell it. And I told it like it was happening today. And then when I went to counseling. I did everything. I went to groups. I went to work to groups. I did everything I could to change the narrative, to change the things not what everybody else was saying, but what I was saying to me about me, based on what happened to me. Because in my mind, what happened to me was who I was and who I was always going to be, and I could never have anything in the world. And so that was what it was. So just be angry and be mad at everybody forever. And that's kind of where I was. Mm-hmm. I was not I didn't even like me. So I stayed away from everybody. I mean, I didn't go to when my mom passed, and she passed on Thanksgiving morning. For 5 years, I refused to go to any family functions, Thanksgiving, Christmas, period. And that offended a lot of people, because particularly my mother's sisters, because they felt like all they had left was their children, and as they explained to me, they felt like that I was keeping that from them, that thing, that love, that ability to love something that she loved, that was a part of her. Took me a while to get there. Took me a while to get there, and then I realized that a couple of things. One, as I was working on myself, the one thing that helped me it sped up the process was when I started helping other people. You ever just be home and just be like, just kind of like, you're depressed, you're depressed. Like, I don't want to get up. I don't want to get out this bed. But then you have to get up and go help somebody with something that you feel like they're worse worse space than you are. And then you go to help them. And all of a sudden, voila, you're no longer in that. You needed to go help somebody else.
So doing that service is what really pulled you through.
pulled me through, and stopped trying to hide behind the mask. Mm-hmm. I literally, as far as I was concerned, was, and folks say I just smiled. I wasn't even smiling. I just pretended like I had no emotion. I didn't talk about, like, if you knew about the story, and then I would tell it to you. I would talk about it if you talked to me about it. But other than that, and you weren't in that circle, you didn't know any of that about me. Mm-hmm. All you knew is I showed up, I worked.
And that mask is what kept you alive.
Yes, yeah. That mask, it did.
It kept you alive. And see, a lot of times people don't understand that. And I know we probably have to end here shortly for time's sakes, but people don't understand the importance of the mask when you need that mask, because it really is your protector and it's your manager. And you have to get to a place, you can't just rip that mask off and to have someone say, snap out of it, because that mask could be the protector that keeps you from suicide. And people don't understand that, if you've really gone through the deep work. And so it has to be done in such a not gradual, but a smooth transition, so that the healing can take place. So with that, Steph, and I'd love to do part 2. Because,
we can do it, for you, Jill.
Yeah, because there is so much to learn. So what I'd like to do with the ending here, because we do about an hour, and we could do longer, but listeners don't last that long. Yeah. I'm going to show your bio right now so people can see. This is Stephanie, and she has a website, and it's speakerstephanie.com, of how you can reach out to her and consult. Now, do you when you do consulting, can people like hire you to do work with you? Do you do that kind of work?
Yes, I do. And so I started out obviously with one-on-one, but I find that group coaching and group consulting obviously is individual and businesses, but the group coaching seems to work better, because one, that gives people opportunity to see it's not just them. Because I know when I went to a professional, and then I did some group coaching, and in the group coaching, I blossomed, mm-hmm. because I met people just like me, who even I sat in the room and was like, wow, I would have never guessed she experienced what I experienced. Right.
Yeah, and it's a great slogan. AA has a slogan, Stephanie, that says, look for the similarities instead of the differences. So when you're doing group coaching and you can see similarities in story, instead of always saying, well, my story's not that important because I didn't go through what she went through. Well, was there anything about the story that you felt similar? And that's how you break through that codependency and the looking good family, because the looking good family doesn't seem like it had physical or emotional sexual abuse. But how about I'm just going to say mom. How about mom? Was mom an overprotector and knew every little thing you did and managed everything in your life?
My mother was my mother was an older protector, but my mother was morbidly, she was, I say 5 foot, I say 5'2", but she was about 5 foot. My mother was morbidly, according to the scale, she was morbidly obese. And so all of time I've known, and so that bothered her. And it was all, and she apparently has, just a lot of trauma surrounded around it. And then she had that, and then, the loss of her marriage, that she had been married for over 30 years. My mother didn't have me till she was 30. And so, so it was a lot of that. And I saw it. Mm-hmm. I saw the shame. But she was very much, she cried a lot. Mm-hmm. She was very much a protector, but I could see she cried because she didn't feel that she was protecting us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So with that, I would have everyone, reach out to Stephanie. And then on your show, Her Story, Our Story, 1 Hour of Power, is that a show that you do on a schedule, or is it like you interview people and you show it and you post it on Facebook, or how does people reach out to you for that show?
So Her Story, Our Story, 1 Hour of Power is on, it's live in YouTube and live on Facebook. every Wednesday at 6:30, there's we call them a different powerhouse, a different person to come and tell their story. First, up until in the last couple of months, it was only women guests. But we realized men have stories.
Oh yeah.
And they have some great stories. And they too most of them don't have an outlet like we have. They don't have these conversations. And so we've invited them in to share and also to receive their flowers. And it has been life-changing, because we're finding that there's somebody that's listening to their story and trying to figure out how to help out their loved one. And now they just got the medicine, if you will.
Well, and what people don't understand, because we too, when we were doing our live retreats, Braveheart Workshop was doing live retreats. We did 7 of them, and the first 5 were just women. And then I just felt God was saying we got to have men come and release their burdens. So we started including men in our retreats. And I'm telling you, the healing for the women got so much more advanced with the men coming into the retreat circle, sharing and getting on the ground and crying hysterically and working through their pain. And through that, the women could utilize the men to help them heal from their own abuse, and vice versa. So having men as part of the healing process on shows is so imperative, so that women can see that men have burdens too, and that every man is not an abuser. Every man is not, but a lot of the men have been abused severely too. So I think that's important. So with that, I'm going to do a hard close. And for everyone, please reach out to Stephanie and connect with her and listen to her show on Wednesday evenings at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. Is it Eastern?
That's correct.
Eastern time. Okay. Thanks so much, Stephanie. We love you, and thanks for joining us on the Connection Show today, Stephanie.
All right. And thank you, Jill. Until next time. Thank you.
God bless you. Take care.
God bless you.
Thanks for joining us on the Connection Show. Let's connect now. Let's restore, renew, and reconnect in community. Enhance connection in our online connection circles. A place to meet up, gather, and feel welcomed. To join us, go to braveheartworkshops.com. Click on the Books Podcast tab, and then the Connection Circles drop down. On the pop-up, join our Connection Circles Facebook group. Our circles meet from 8 to 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Share story, topics, and laughter with men and women. To learn more about Connection Circles, go to braveheartworkshops.com. Thanks for joining us on the Connection Show, and have a great day.